Tap water in this country, you may know this, costs just over 1/5 of a penny for a litre. That's delivered and taken away. For most people, that's a low price relative to other things. So low that there's a kind of a disconnect between price and value, which of course is beyond price in a sense, since you're talking about water. There's a communication problem, and that's the thing that we face at Water UK in the industry, because we need to go on investing in the service and the environment, and prices will probably go on rising. The problem is that we do a lot of work for society, and a lot of that is environmental work, as you know, but the customer pays the bill. And it's not, therefore, an individual service, all of it that we provide, it's an indirect service. So we have to explain that rising prices are good value, even if you don't see the results directly yourself. We tackle this kind of communication problem. Obviously, we emphasize the direct benefits, standards are rising, etc., etc. But we also try to say, and I'll come back to this, that the indirect benefits are in everyone's interest. We're making some kind of progress, I think, but it's uphill. So that's one sector, the water sector, looking for a way all the time to value the invaluable. And at the wider policy level, I'd quite like to define the task that we've got in this way. It would be interesting to hear people's views. I would say that it's trying to persuade people that it's in their interests to prioritise spending on biodiversity and the environment. Now, some people might dispute this and the priority point and say, well, no, you can have it all. Well, frankly, I doubt it, in present circumstances particularly. Prioritising spending on indirect benefits, and think of that in the terms that I'm discussing it, is a bit like saving. It does mean sacrificing some present consumption. So what's the best way of making the case? Well, you've heard from both my colleagues up here at the moment about using economics and markets to measure and, most importantly, to demonstrate the value of ecosystem services. This is clearly going to be very important. It's got massive potential, we've heard about that. But here is my provocation. I doubt it's the whole answer, or even the main reason we will succeed if we are going to succeed. Natural England has just published an impressive report, which you may have seen, called No Charge Query, Valuing the Natural Environment. They make an interesting case for treating biodiversity and the environment as critical infrastructure for investment purposes. And at the launch of this report, they had provocateurs, or whatever you might call them, and they made a number of different points, and they generally had a common view, as you would expect, about biodiversity and the importance of promoting it properly. But what were the ideas that they had about selling it? Some of them thought it was about inspiring people. You've heard a bit of that this morning. Some of them thought that it meant using economics to prove the value we've been talking about, and some thought it was really about changing behaviour. And the Secretary of State, Hilary Benn, was there, and he said if you asked a person in the street what they saw in nature, they might say it was uplifting or wonderful, or they might not use those words, but generally they might. But if you asked them, he said, about the economics of nature, I quote, you'd get some puzzled looks. I don't think he was questioning the whole point about valuing ecosystem services or ecosystem economics, but he did make a good point, I think. And then another one of these provocateurs that Natural England asked to take part was somebody called Paul Johnson from Frontier Economics, you may know him. He asked why all the efforts to persuade people up to now hadn't really been very successful. And in reply, he asked another question. He said, do we stakeholders really believe that change is needed? That's an uncomfortable question, but he too may be onto something. So take the economics, cost and benefit analysis, impact assessment, monetized values, market mechanisms, etc., etc. They're clearly going to help us, but there are problems with this. We're dealing with public goods which are really priceless and we're promoting a precautionary set of actions.
You've had your 5 minutes.
Right, I'll stop them.
Is there any... You've got another page. Is there anything crucial you need to... another sentence?
Well, I
Sorry.
think, yeah, that's fine. I'll give you one sentence. I'll give you the end. I'm not proposing any sort of... I mean, I think we're creating a market here, and that there is some danger in that. And I did want... Let me just quote from Natural England. I'm really impressed with this document. I think it's an important one. It was excellent to hear from them that realigning land on the Humber estuary has created a flood protection benefit of £400,667 a year and £500,000 worth of wildlife value. It sounds good, and it is, but if this were the only reason, I would worry, because by setting a price, we'd be creating a market. And in a market, on another occasion, I can imagine someone coming along with a ton of money and outbidding the flood benefit and the wildlife value. Thank you.
Thank you very much.